Hello people, Gnmpolicemata here. Today I'll be bringing you a video in which I talk about multiple 3DS custom firmwares. They're technically not custom firmwares, but this is probably as close as to custom firmware as we'll ever get on the 3DS. So we might as well call it that. Note that NTR CFW has nothing to do with this. It's completely different. It runs on top of an existing. It's completely different. It has nothing to do with this. It doesn't replace Luma 3DS, Corbenic, anything like that. It has some features. It runs on top of games and all of that, but it has nothing to do with the CFWs that I'm going to talk about. So yeah, if you use that, good for you. I do use it too, but it has nothing to do with what I'm going to talk about. This video was inspired by two topics by GBA temp member Crystal the Glacian. Those topics are frequently asked questions, what CFW is best for me, and please stop using RXTools. So I'll be talking about Luma 3DS, Corbenic, etc. I'm going to talk a little about RXTools and why you shouldn't use it. I'm going to talk about Gateway just a little bit, but I'm not going to talk about the Rainint clone that DS2 are using, Supercard are using, because that breaks the GPL and it frankly is just a ripoff of Rainant, so there's no point anyway. If you have a DS2 Plus, I think it's just for DS2 Plus, I'm not sure. If you have one of those, good for you. I'm not going to talk about that. So, I will go over the current custom firmwares, the older custom firmwares, and why you should update and how to update them, because you really should and you'll see why. So, without further ado, let's begin. So I'll start by talking about RXTools. RXTools is a collection of hacking tools for the Nintendo 3DS. It includes many tools like a NAND backup and restore function, uh, CTR NAND file management, shortpad generation, title decryption, and it includes RX mode. So RX mode is the name of the CFW used by RXTools, included in RXTools. You can launch RXTools from the browser exploit. You can use mset, aka system settings exploit, the DS profile settings, or you can launch it from menu hacks or yeah, ninja hacks, I guess. You can launch it from there. So RX mode is a fairly simple custom firmware. It has signature patches, Aminan support, and it also supports Sysnan, but that's not really recommended if you don't know what you're doing. If you want to use Sysnan, go with ARM9 loader hacks. RXTools doesn't support A9LH, so if you break it, you're you're done for, unless you have a hard mode and a valid NAND backup. So, as I was saying, RXTools includes a set of tools like NAND dump and restores that, well, people can consider useful. However, though RXTools used to have a lot of features, it was one of the most advanced CFWs at the time. ARM9 loaded hacks came out, became mainstream, and RXTools stopped being supported. It's currently obsolete, mostly broken, and it can fully break at any moment Nintendo decides to kill it. Actually, I'm very surprised they haven't done it yet. They could have done it uh, just by killing that. By killing RXTools, they would all actually, if they tried to kill hard mod and DSiWare downgrades, they would probably kill RXTools as well, because RXTools relies on old files, and as soon as Nintendo cuts off support for those files, well, you can't boot that RXTools with a recent Emunan anymore. So, if you want those features, well, you could say you like RXTools because of the features it has, like the NAND backup and restore function, but those are kind of broken and tend to freeze or crash. You'd better use Decrypt9 WIP. It has the features of RXTools and more, while being an active, stable project. It has everything save for RX mode itself, which most CFWs, actually not most, every other CFW accomplishes. It does everything RX mode does, and it does it better. Say, Luma 3DS is a better CFW than RX mode. Corbenic is also better than RX mode, so if it takes like 5 minutes to change, why not? So, many people seem to think changing CFWs will make you lose your games, your saves, your menu, whatever. You won't. Your emunand, even if you use an emunand, and if you switch to ARM9 loader hacks, you can inject your emunand to sysnand, and you don't need an emunand anymore. You can boot sysnand safely, and you'll be able to update it just fine, as because Luma 3DS, Corbenic, they have firm protection, which will stop updates from removing ARM9 loader hacks. So if you use emunand, and if you want to keep using emunand, you also don't lose any data, because Luma 3DS, uh, I don't know, Raynand, they all read from the same emunand. The emunand is the same. You don't lose any data. Hell, you can use Luma today, switch to Raynand tomorrow, then go back to RXTools. Please don't. The day after that, you won't lose any data. Anyway, switching custom firmware is extremely simple. You can either follow the reference guide, also known as Playlect's guide. You can find the link in the description. That will give you ARM9 loader hacks, which is the recommended hacks as of now. It is as safe and easy as it is going to get. It also takes a lot less time than it did back when it was released. Or if you don't want ARM9 loader hacks for whatever reason, you can just switch to an actively developed custom firmware like Luma and use menu hacks or mset if you really want to. Out of those two, I'd say menu hacks is the best, since you can auto boot with menu hacks. With mset, you can't do that. Anyway, it takes at most 5 minutes to switch a custom firmware. And if you want to switch to a menu hacks Luma 3DS setup, you can check the description. There is another link for another tutorial there for switching from Luma to RXTools. Seriously, go with ARM9 loader hacks. It really has a lot of advantages. It should go with that. So that is it about RXTools. There isn't much more I can say about it, really. Heads up! I've just discovered that the latest Animal Crossing update no longer supports an older native firm version. What this means is that if you use RXTools and play, well, the games that use this newer requirement, that need a newer native firm, you won't be able to play them at all. So you will have to switch to something like Luma 3DS. Or say, no, I won't update and I won't play the game and screw this. Which is very dumb, because at that point you're just clinging to something without any objective. Well, that's what most people who complain about Luma being hard to change to, and well, that's it really. Let's continue with the video. Just wanted to tell you this. Newer games will probably use this as well. Pokemon Sun and Moon will probably use this as well, and you'll probably be unable to play them with RXTools or other outdated custom firmwares. So now, talking about Raynand. Raynand, I'm going to talk about it before talking about Luma 3DS, because Luma 3DS came from this one, so yeah. So Raynand started as an open source new 3DS custom firmware, later added old 3DS support. It supports being launched from Ninja Hacks, AMSAT, Spider, ARM9 loader hacks. So yeah, you can launch it from pretty much everything. It supports emunand or patched syznand. It supports disabling signature checks, which is what you need to get CIAs installed and for them to actually run, to show up, etc. You have firm partition update protection. So what this means is that you can safely update your system if you have ARM9 loader hacks or anyway emunand. Well, emunand doesn't really need firm protection, but if you use ARM9 loader hacks with a patched syznand, you want a firm protection before updating so that it doesn't wipe ARM9 loader hacks or that it doesn't break your system. So you can have region-free CIAs, region-free carts, disable auto updates, disable eShop update checks, disable RO verifications, and more. So next we have Luma 3DS. Originally started as Alrainand. It is currently the mainstream custom firmware, the most used custom firmware, and it calls itself the most noob-proof custom firmware, which it really is. It's really simple to set up. The guides all teach how to set it up. Yeah, it's a user-friendly. It has a large user base. And yeah, it has a user-friendly configuration menu, which has like 5-6 options at most. I don't really remember. It has a few options, but still. Most people only use 1 or 2 of them, and you don't really need much more. You can't disable firm protection, so there's no way for you to screw that up. It's always on, so it supports ARM9 loader hacks, menu hacks, AMSAT. You can launch it from pretty much everything. ARM9 loader hacks is still recommended thank you notification, so it supports both emunand and syznand. It supports more than one emunand, I believe 4 or 5. Not sure about that, as I use Corbenic the most, and Corbenic supports 10. Anyway, you probably don't need that, really. So you have firm protection as well. You have reboot patches. This means that for the old 3DS, games like Smash Bros, Monster Hunter 4, well, the upcoming Pokemon Moon in Sun and Moon, those games reboot the console before launching. GBA titles and DSiWare also do that. So DSi titles will do that. So you need reboot patches for that to work fine. You have region free, silent updates disabled. You can chain load payloads. This is imagine you want to launch the Crypt 9 or Hourglass 9. All you have to do for that is putting it in the right folder, giving it the right name, and when you're booting, you hold, for example, the start button, and it will launch Hourglass 9 or Decrypt 9 instead of loading your usual home menu. So it also allows for a custom string. You can use the default one, which is sys or emu, depending on syznand or emunand, or you can use a custom one. That's a more recent feature. It's cool. You can overclock the CPU. For the new 3DS, that means that for games that you don't use the power of the new 3DS, games that were made to use the old 3DS power, they don't actually run at new 3DS speeds. You can use that, and it will run at new 3DS speeds, which can improve games like Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. It will make the game smoother. It also supports boot splashes, region and language emulation, developer mode to turn your console into a developer 3DS. You don't need that, most likely, especially if you need to see this video or read the topics. It supports RO patching, it supports a security pin, and yeah, most people use this custom firmware. It has a large community, it has an active development history. Pretty much every bug is fixed the day after or very close. to its discovery. Also, you can easily update it, the custom firmware from the console itself. You can use Luma Updater or Star Updater UN, which is my own fork, which is more updated. If you use menu hacks, you will want to use Star Updater UN, as Star Updater doesn't yet support menu hacks for more recent versions of Luma. And that's because some files changed, and although I did make a pull request to the repository, it is still not merged. So if you use menu hacks, either consider changing to ARM9 loader hacks, updating manually, or using Star Updater UN. I recommend you go with ARM9 loader hacks. It's really, well, good. Now, as for Corbenic, Corbenic CFW is a custom firmware inspired by Cake's FW, but it is not a fork of that custom firmware. First of all, this custom firmware allows you to choose, it gives you control over each option of the patches. This is a power user and developer oriented custom firmware. It is not meant for people who don't know what they're doing. So if you don't know what you're doing, go with either Salt FW, which I'm going to talk about, or Luma 3DS, because yeah, you shouldn't be messing with things you don't know, really. So it has a cool, nice menu. You can customize your options, choose exactly what you want, choose exactly what you don't want. It has firm protection, but it is optional, so you'll have to toggle that. So if you do want to use Corbenic, be careful, make sure it is selected, because if you update without firm protection, you're either going to lose ARM9 loader hacks or brick, and that is not good. So you can use sysnand, you can use 10ME nands if you want. It supports reboot patches. It only uses ARM loader hacks. You can't run Corbenic from any other entry point, so don't forget about that. Only ARM9 loader hacks users can use this. ShadowNAND is also ARM9 loader hacks if you are confused and don't know that. Anyway, it has region free. It is optional, just like pretty much everything with this custom firmware. It supports language emulation patches, blocking eShop cart and Nintendo updates. You can fix the friend code applet on older custom firmware so that you go online even with an outdated firmware. You can turn your 3DS into a developer mode 3DS. You can adjust the CPU speed. It's not really overclock, as I said before. It's more of a, well, I don't know, setting it to the new 3DS speeds. This option is not shown if you use an old 3DS because it wouldn't do anything anyway. It supports chain loading payloads, and frankly, this is my favorite thing about Corbenic. It has a really, really nice menu for chain loading payloads. I really prefer it to Luma's approach. It is amazing. It is my favorite custom firmware, but don't go with it if you don't know what you're doing, because you might screw something up. It also supports splash screens and bootloader themes. Those are pretty cool. It supports RO patching. Also, there is a nightly build service available, just like with Luma 3DS. You can get those builds from the Scythe repository, or you can get them from the dedicated updating app made by me called Corbenic Updater RE that can install both the stable or the nightly. As of now, you probably should use the stable, as the nightly is getting fixed as far as I know. Yeah, that's about it for Corbenic. It's not for noobs. It's for experienced users, for developers, for power users, for people who have OCD about control. They really need to have control. They have to do it the way they want. This is a good custom firmware, but only for people who actually know what they're doing. Don't mess with stuff that you don't know. I say it again. So now I'm going to talk about a couple of Luma 3DS forks, starting with Salt FW, aka Slim Alternative Firmware. This is a stripped down version of Luma 3DS. It has pretty much every patch that Luma 3DS has, but it strips away features. Like, it doesn't have a configuration menu, it doesn't have menu hacks or AMSET support, it doesn't support Eminand or Rednand, so it doesn't have payload chain loading. What it has is the bare minimum. ARM9 loader hack support, only Sysnand support. It patches all you need, like it has firm protection, it has GBA and DSI support, it has reboot patches, it is region free, it has region and language emulation, it has boot splashes and RO patching, but it doesn't have anything else. You should use this if you want to install a custom firmware and, well, not care about that anymore. If you want to forget it exists, if you want, I don't know, to make it look like a vanilla system, it's simple. This custom firmware isn't used by many people, but it is indeed stable. It is based on Luma 3DS, and it hasn't been updated in quite a while because it is long-term support. It isn't supposed to get updates all the time. It is stable. There is no updater, there is no nightly build service, which would kind of go against the idea of a long-term support build, I guess. But yeah, it's as simple as that. Now about Puma 3 3DS. It is based on Luma 3DS, and it was made to be, well, a medium point between Corbenic and Luma, for example. It keeps the ease of use of Luma 3DS while adding some of the options that were in the dev build of Luma to, well, a power user build. As of now, Luma 3DS doesn't have two separate builds anymore, so yeah, it this Puma hasn't been updated in a while either, so you probably don't want to use that. I might be wrong, but I think the last update was before the merge of the builds, the dev and normal builds of Luma 3DS. But yeah, this is essentially Luma 3DS with a couple more options from the developer build. It only supports ARM9 loader hacks. It has region free as an option. It is not automatic, it is optional. Anti-update patches are also optional. It has a verbose error display patch from Luma 3DS developer. It, yeah, it has some more stuff, but it keeps it simple. If you don't want something as simple as Luma and don't feel confident enough to go with Corbenic, Puma would be the CFW for you. But currently Luma, as I said, merged the dev and non-dev versions, so yeah. Next, we have Lima 3DS. So what is Lima 3DS? Lima 3DS is a fork of two projects. Lima 3DS is a fork of both the Crypt 9. Is it the Crypt 9? Yes, it is. Of both the Crypt 9 and Luma 3DS. It is made of two parts. One is called Lima 3DS and one is called uh, Lima CFW. So the Lima 3DS part is a fork of the Crypt 9, and and the Lima CFW is a fork of Luma 3DS. What is it though? Lima 3DS is essentially for those people who feel nostalgic about Luma or about RXTools or that liked RXTools, I suppose. I don't know if they want that RXTools feel. It essentially boots you to the Crypt 9 menu, a slightly modified one, and it allows you to boot Luma from there. Luma, no, Lima CFW, which is essentially Luma, and there is not much more than that. So if you are an RXTools user switching to another entry point, you might want to look into that because, well, as far as looks go, it's probably the closest you'll ever have because very few people actually care about RXTools right now and you should switch, as I've said probably 10 billion times by now. But yeah, that's about it. So, about the Gateway 3DS. The Gateway 3DS is a flashcard for the Nintendo 3DS. It supports firmwares 4.1 to 9.2. It supports a micro SDHC, and micro SDXC up to 128 gigabytes. It supports Eminand up to 11.2 at the moment, as that is the latest firmware and it is confirmed to be working with it. There is an implementation of online loader hacks for the Gateway by the Gateway team called Gateway Fastboot, but I don't recommend you go with it, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. So what the Gateway has is a way of loading ROMs of the cartridge, 3DS format ROMs or 3DZ. It can be used to install CIA files. You can, for example, use FBI to install CIAs on a Gateway custom firmware, because the Gateway is technically a custom firmware like Luma, though it requires the Gateway cartridge. Now, the Gateway is really disliked within the community, and the reasons why that is are the following. The Gateway 3DS has clones. For example, the DS2 Plus, if I'm not wrong, it is a Gateway clone. The issue with the clones is that they use the same software as the Gateway, and the problem was that the Gateway team decided to add code to their launcher so that users of clones would get their consoles bricked. In my opinion, this is a very bad move. It's not a legitimate move. I mean, some people who bricked with the Gateway launcher didn't even know what the Gateway was. What's the difference between a Gateway and a clone? They don't know that. They didn't know that. The Gateway team at most should have tried to block the cards. If they detected a clone, they would stop that. They wouldn't make the custom firmware work. They wouldn't boot the Emunand. But no, the Gateway team decided to add brick code that bricked the 3DS. And as far as I know, I'm not sure. I think it is not a simple brick solvable that is capable of being solved by simply restoring an NAND backup. I'm not sure what the method to brick was, but it's a very bad move. I mean, I don't know what the Gateway is, and I see this thing called a DS2 Plus, and I say, whoa, what a cool innovative shit. I'm going to buy it. Guess what happens? I brick and I don't even know why. They should have blocked the card, but they shouldn't have bricked end users, because it's really not their fault. And another thing is that brick code didn't only brick users of clone cards. Users of legit cards, some of them still bricked. And because they're a shady company making a shady product that is not exactly legal, there isn't much anyone can do against them. And yeah, Gateway is currently hated by pretty much everyone except those that own one. Anyway, Gateway has one more thing, and that is the only feature it has that is not superior by its free custom firmware counterparts, and that is cheats. GateShark. GateShark is based on the DS Action Replay. It allows you to have cheats in games. Cheats, some of them, if not most, work with the GateShark 2 NTR plugins. NTR, as I said, I'm not really going to talk about it in this video, but NTR is capable of running cheats, so yeah, but it's not really superior to GateShark. GateShark is the one thing that Gateway does well, so yeah. Anyway, the Gateway 3DS now has the so-called Gateway Fastboot, which is, well, at first the Gateway Fastboot installer, or the I'm going to call it Gateway ARM9 Loader Hacks installer because I'm not going to say Fastboot all the time. Anyway, it was, well, not very well made. I mean, the tools Gateway copied were open source, and even so, they couldn't properly copy and paste the code. I mean, they removed security features, security checks, in order to cut down the time of installation of ARM9 loader hacks. Back then, 100% of new 3DS users would break if they tried to install that. I believe that is no longer the case, but still, if you're going to copy-paste software, at least do it properly. So, another thing is that their ARM9 loader hacks implementation has a lot of DRM, and that really sucks. If you install Gateway ARM9 loader hacks, you'll be unable to, well, you will be unable to boot the 3DS without the gateway, so if your gateway breaks, you're screwed. On the other hand, if you have ARM9 loader hacks, the community one, the original one, you can still boot if you have the most recent version, and if you have Luma 3DS on CTR NAND, you can boot without the SD. If you have Luma NAND, you can boot without SD. If you have well, if your SD card breaks, SD cards you can buy one for cheap. I mean, SD cards are much cheaper than a gateway. Not to mention a gateway still needs an SD card. So there's no real point to buying one. So you can actually install the regular ARM9 loader hacks and boot Gateway through it. There is a guide below that shows that. And yeah, personally, if you can, I'm going to tell you that if you own a gateway, sell it. Or if you own a gateway for cheats, don't install the Gateway ARM9 loader hacks. Go with the community ARM9 loader hacks and install, get the gateway payload as secondary. So yeah. Now, one thing you must know is that the Gateway ARM9 loader hacks does not have firm protection. This means that if you boot Gateway in SysNAND and you update, if there is a system update available, you will break. Well, you will break if you are on the new 3DS. On the old 3DS, you probably will be updated to the latest system version and lose all of your hacks. I wouldn't recommend that. You probably don't want that. So there isn't much more to say about the Gateway 3DS. So yeah, that was it. So thank you for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please click the like button below, subscribe to my channel for more. Special thanks to Crystal Glacian and other GBA tent members for the information I used in this video. So that was it. Bye, till next time.